To burn or not to burn, that is the question. So, Necrotic Grip is a thing, apparently. Finally managed to get my hands on it a while back, and while I'm not exactly bending over backwards for it, I am interested, because this is the closest thing that we've ever gotten to a Diablo-style set bonus in Destiny, maybe ever. Now, I'm gonna be frank here, there's not much real value to say about this. The big selling point is that you can use Thorn with it, but realistically, that's about as far as it goes. There's not much to talk about because it has virtually no barriers, and it's mostly just a common sense type deal. If it's a melee attack of any element, Necro gives it a poison tick as well, and that's that. The exotic itself isn't all that crazy, we all know how it works. You slap something, poison. Full charge, no charge, doesn't matter. Shoot something with Thorn, poison. They work in sync with one another in a way that we've never quite seen before, and that alone makes it worth chasing. In theory. As a result, Necro will always work best when it's paired with Thorn. That's because the two share one base ability, that being Devourer. They do the same things, except Necro allows the player to kickstart that burn dot from a slap to the face instead of busting a cap in someone, which, for the record, is arguably more fun. However, the main thing that you need to know about Necro is that it's going to straight up lie to you. Let's take a look at its perk card real quick and I will elaborate. Damaging combatants with melee attacks corrupts them with increasing damage over time. Defeating a corrupted combatant spreads the corruption to nearby targets and restores melee energy. Not one time, not a single time, have I been able to get that to actually work. The running theory is that there's an internal cooldown that Bungie conveniently left off the buff tray, so you never actually know when it's going to restore energy or not. That's like loading a Glock with a mag that's got Nerf darts in it. Sure, yeah, it's a gun and it's dangerous, but you got no idea what's about to come out of that thing. There's a 50-50 chance whoever's on the other end is going to meet God or laugh at you. That's how this makes you feel, and it sucks. It's either that or this is one of those scenarios where the developers detailed its function wrong because words are hard. Maybe each target affected by its slightly buffed strength regen? Honestly, I have no idea and I no longer care enough to find out. I've watched other creators, I have scoured the forums, I have no real answer, and again, I don't care anymore. In layman's terms, if you always assume it's going to let you down, you'll never be disappointed when it does, because it fails literally 99 times out of 100. It doesn't do its job what I need it to, therefore it is 50% trash. End of story. Moving past that though, the two buffs do tick independently of one another, thankfully, and Necro's redeeming factor here is that it can be used with any subclass, including anything with a ranged melee attack. Penumbral Blast, Celestial Fire, Ball Lightning, you name it, it'll work. They also stack on existing dots as well from any of those abilities. If it's frozen, it'll burn, which is great and all, but that's why we're not going to use stasis, because as soon as you break the crystal, that's when they stop taking damage. So, we're going to do the quick version of skill trees because I'm writing the script as I go and I've already headed up to here with this exotic. We're going with the Dawnblade since it's got burning melee abilities. Grenades. Solar Grenade definitely. Lots of burn damage. As for melee attacks, both middle and bottom tree Dawnblade deal burn damage on charged melee abilities. If you really want to penny pinch your DPS, take an Empowered Rift. There, we've gone over skill trees. A healthy stat line is going to look awfully similar to my own, right here. Since Necro is going to use every ounce of its energy doing the exact opposite of what it's supposed to actually do, it's wise to carry a hefty strength stat. Radiant Light is a good strength supplement if your armor stats are garbage, on top of gen mods across other equipped armors. If you want to get fancy, you can bring firepower with a couple of charges of light so you don't have to rely on guns to keep your grenade off cooldown. The basic strategy here is to slap a target with your melee attack. That'll also kickstart the corruption from Necro and they'll deal damage together. You can likely see why we want another dot, because we're going to stack as many as we can. Weapons are easy. We're looking for a dot of any kind, so that limits us to 4. Those being Thorn, Witherhoard, that French bow that I can't pronounce the name of, and lastly, Outbreak. All of these are interchangeable since they all kind of do the same thing in essence. For energy weapons, I will always suggest something with Demolitionist. Slug shotguns are top tier at the moment, so you can't go wrong with a first in, last out. It's awesome. I love it. And if you're not using the Laments or the Fallen Guillotine, then are you even really using a heavy weapon, or what are you doing? Come on. As previously mentioned, each weapon leaves a dot on its target, so it really comes down to whatever your preference is. The only real difference here is that Thorn is the only one that's going to spread corruption on a kill unless that target was already corrupted before you killed it. We're going to skip the mod section of this video specifically because almost all of this is self-sufficient. It doesn't really require any mods to boost it, except for maybe Radiant Light, which I've already mentioned once already. Aside from that, it just kind of works on its own. So, we've already looked at weapons. They're all interchangeable. First in, last out for energy, Fallen Guillotine, or Lament for your power weapon. We've also already gone over our exotic, so that leaves nothing but combat, and surprisingly enough, this one is of quite the interest. So, an encounter starts. Hurl that melee attack and let the dot burn through the trash mobs. That is its one and only job. Thorn is always going to perform better here because every kill will also proc Necro, but if that's not something you're really concerned about, then just stick with any of the other previously mentioned weapons. They all do the same thing, so this is a lot more flexible than it looks on paper. For me specifically, I've been rotating through Witherhoard and Outbreak Prime. Monarch is a lower tier DPS option for this. It does the same thing as all the others, and it's great, but the lower RPM will ultimately set it back. The poison is good, but again, the RPM is just going to set it back. Like I said earlier, you can swap out of any of the elemental subclasses here. All you're really doing at the end of the day is just cycling through burn dots, and the burn from that melee attack is an optional thing if you're really just trying to penny pinch. The main goal, the only thing that really matters, is whether or not you're stacking both a weapon burn and a poison burn from Necro. So the strategy remains the same with every class, including all 4 elements. Burn your melee attack and let it spread while you cycle out abilities. Bam, easy. Each subclass has its own little quirk for this. The Stormcaller has the Ionic Traces and can poison from a distance. Dawnblade can both charge ability energy and poison midair, and Voidwalker has Devour, which is great for keeping your melee off cooldown so you can get an additional hit in the combo chain. Shadebinder has fragments that can buff ability regen, and Ice is great, don't get me wrong, but again, you can't stack a burn dot on top of an ice crystal because it'll shatter over time if you damage it, effectively rendering the entire combo useless. Unless you're using something like the Duskfield Grenade, all these targets are going to freeze instantly, and all you can get out of that is just shatter damage. It takes way too much setting up to effectively keep the chain going any other way. High strength stats will help keep melee attacks off cooldown on top of any mods you might bring. You've no need to worry whether or not you'll have a charged melee for whatever the big boy target is. All he needs is the burn, which Necro will proc regardless if you've got a full charge or not. The main focus here is just keeping the burn dot going, not dealing the most damage you can with the melee attack. The burn dot will pay for itself over time, and you're going to be swapping to heavy for DPS anyway, so there's not much of a real point. Think of it more as like a double damage supplement, something to go along with the weapon that you're currently using. If you've got some friends to play and experiment with, I strongly advise to play around with this and see if you can get it to crit naturally. To my knowledge, there's no way to make both burn dots crit on their own, not solo at least. I had a couple friends hit a boss target with Tractor Cannon and Melting Point, and the damage increase was astronomical obviously, but alas, there is no way to get that buff solo as far as I know. Either way, that's about it for right now. I'm a little sick and nasally, that's why this video is kinda late, but in the next few days there will be a bunch more, don't worry. I'm trying to get back in the swing of things, but constantly having to go to the doctor and get some Q-tip thing shoved up my nose is really fucking up my groove. And now I'm gonna go to bed.